Hello, everybody. It is 4:45 p.m. Central Time on the 11th of August, 2021. It's Wednesday here in the United States. I'm going to be recording this update and putting it over on YouTube. Going to do a little forecast for you, let you know areas that we're going to be watching going forward over the next 7 days. That being said, let me turn on display captures so you can see what I see. And if you're a new viewer, let me welcome you in. This is Earthquake 3D, by the way, the program. I don't get anything for recommending it, but I do recommend that you use something like this. It uses the USGS and the EMSC European Agency. We're looking at 48 hours worth of quakes. And the deep earthquakes, they are raised high off the globe, which again, the deep earthquakes we have to pay attention to because of this. What I think is going on down below the plate. So, down below the plate, I think, over hundreds if not thousands of miles, VLF, very low frequency, electrically induced, but an actual wave down in the asthenosphere, which is an area below the plates, above the magma. It's like a plasticky-like area almost, and it focuses in on itself. It can't compress down into the fluid-like structure of the asthenosphere, so it focuses up in a concentric standing wave, a singularity or a spike. That causes a hammering action like what we see now here in the tank of a standing wave tank, where first one deep earthquake occurs and a spread starts to take place throughout the tank. Now this is a tank of water, but I want you to think of a standing wave forming inside of a plate boundary. So what's a plate boundary? Let's go take a look and go show you on the USGS map over here. These red lines, these are separations between the plates. Now they meet right up against each other, of course, but it's a crack that starts at the surface and goes all the way down to the underside of the plate. So then we start getting a hammering action coming in on the underside of the plate, again, like this. And then it spreads up, out, and away like this. And you start pumping multiple deep earthquakes into the tank, and it starts adding more amplitude, or the wave gets bigger. The magnitude increases, in this case with the earthquake. Now notice how they're all the same size, or about the same size, as they spread through the tank, bounce off this end, and go back into each other. That happens with earthquakes that spread out, and they're all about the same size, within a hair of a point of each other, across vast distances of the wave tank in Mother Nature. The wave tank in Mother Nature is the red lines, are the red lines, and they spread out all the way over to Europe and dead end at the mid-Atlantic ridge, like a giant wall that bisects the whole planet from the North Pole at a supervolcano at the North Pole all the way down to the South Pole, basically. So the wave starts down below the plates, spreads out and away and around, and then we get our earthquakes dropped off along the way. I had to explain all that to you. That's for the new people. Now we find our middle points between the current sets of earthquakes. Why do we find our middle points? Let me hit play on this. I'm going to park my mouse over the center of one of the waves, or at the peak of one of the waves, it doesn't matter. What you'll see is the center of the previous wave goes in, the valley or the trough, the bottom of the wave, fills in exactly the middle point of where the top of the previous wave was. In other words, the wave moves and the middle point gets filled in by the next wave. You see that? Okay. In a standing wave. The same thing happens with the earthquakes. So now it's pretty easy to understand that if this is the peak of a wave, and this is the peak of a wave, and the whole plate boundary is the wave tank, then we're talking about the wave tank being this. And then we find the halfway points between the current sets of earthquakes, and that's most likely the next spot to be hit. So, north of New Zealand, we're going to start here. Middle point between all the sets of quakes, there's 3 sets, 2 on the north, 1 on the south. North Island. We call this the catcher's mitt position, by the way. This looks like a catcher's mitt, so when you're looking at it, I call it the catcher's mitt, okay? But the activity coming in right on the plate boundary off the thumb of the catcher's mitt to the east of. Let's go back over and show you here. See how the red line comes down, goes across the Cook Strait to the south, and then goes down the Southern Alps and goes down to the South Pole. Okay, so halfway point here is going to be filled in by an earthquake that's larger than what's on both sides. So what's on both sides? A bunch of 4s and a deep earthquake on the north side and a 5.3. And on the south side, a semi-deep earthquake on the middle of the Cook Strait. And on the south side, very far to the south, a 5.5. So it's going to be between 5.3 and 5.5. Again, between our two extreme points on the wave tank. Think of this as one end of the wave tank. This is the other, and we're getting hammering in the middle of the wave tank. If this is the middle, here where the deep earthquakes are, and it's going up, down, and around the bend of the plate, and it's going down and across. Pretty easy to find the halfway point on the north side. On the south side, it's also easy to find. Look where the rings overlap. They overlap right here, just south of New Zealand mainland. So we zoom in, there's the plate boundary again. So both spots are going to get hit. Both are going to be in the 5-ish range or greater. If any new deep earthquakes hammer in and add more energy in, of course, that will increase things. Okay, now hold on one second. Sorry about that, guys. This is live, and I had a little sneeze and cough. It might be happening throughout the day, throughout the rest of the update. Okay, over to the west, huge open area here. That's going to be filled in as well. Areas on both sides, 4.9 on one side, 5.3 on the other. Take the two, add them together, it equals 5.349. Let's just call it a 5.4. So something slightly larger, again, will pop off in the middle on the plate boundary. Let's show you the plate boundary here, the wave tank. So one side we've got quakes, other sides we've got the quakes, and in the middle is where the new wave is going to come up. Be slightly larger than what's on both sides. The combined total of basically of what's on both sides. Once we get over here, it gets a little bit different. This is our big 7.2 quake in the energy. Think of this like a previous push that broke in that wave tank. And a big push came up underneath several days ago with all the deep quakes, causing this new one. Now the wave is going to spread out. So, up to the north, we have to warn two different areas. Taiwan, pretty obvious. It's sitting high and dry. We should get a new earthquake striking here in the next few days. That's greater than what was previously here. Let's show you what struck previous. 5.3 and a 5.2. So let's put it at 5.5. How am I coming to that determination? Most of the energy should go around, just strike on the way, and dead end up here at Japan. We'll go look at the plate boundary map here. Should go up, drop off a new quake here, about the same size as what's over by Guam. Both should recombine at the H-shaped bend up here to the north in Japan. That's right next to Tokyo. But the magnitude should be about a magnitude less than what went into the system. This should actually spread out across both plate boundaries, lose a little steam as it goes around, drops off a quake here at Taiwan, and 6.2 up here next to Tokyo. Again, another one, just like what happened a couple weeks ago. A few weeks ago, this happened previously. This happens all the time. That's why we have the arrows on here. It's happened many times. Going up further to the north, now we get into a hot mess of volcanic eruptions that we have to talk about really quick and take those in conjunction with the earthquakes. So looking at 48 hours worth of quakes, again, it's a hot mess of 4s and 5s. But the stepping stone path is the same thing, the wave tank, where they're equally spaced throughout the wave tank, but the wave tank's uneven. It's not a perfect square, like in the laboratory. It goes up and around the bend of Kamchatka and goes over into Alaska. So, eruptions. Shirin-Koten volcano, never on the list, here in the Kuril Islands. Shiveluch and Karinsky, both on Kamchatka's peninsula. Seismopochnoi and Pavlov, all erupting in the last day. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at least across this area. Well, let's count the quakes. Look, right next to each volcano, we got a 5 or an upper 4 reaching right over to where the 8 struck last week. And Pavlov erupting right next to it. Okay, I tell you all that because halfway points are going to get hit between the current sets of quakes. Therefore, the Kuril Islands are also going to get struck, and it's going to be something bigger than the 5s on both sides. Take the 5.1 plus the 5.0, it equals 5.2. Add in the 4.9, it equals 5.249. Let's just say it equals 5.3, because that's really what it is. We'll round it up with the other 4s in the mix. So let's say mid-range 5 at least, due where all 3 sets of rings overlap, which is right here on Mount Ebeko. Volcano. You see that? See how all 3 sets of rings overlap right here? So think of that as a 3-pointed wave that's going to be coming together on an odd-shaped wave tank. a triangular shaped wave tank, and of course there's going to be 3 points on that at least. As we go over to Alaska, this is where we really start to see that the spread has gone up across mainland Alaska, out into the Bering Strait, into the Arctic Circle, 4s spreading out across the whole mass. That's after an 8, so that's actually really low. But think about how much energy it actually would take to displace all of Alaska in a week's time. Well, you can see it here given away with the path of earthquakes that goes and jumps off like a ramp right up into Mount Denali, and then spreads out from there like a fracture point across all of central Alaska, focusing in up here where there's a volcanic group. And you know what? Let's go open up good old Google Earth. Show you the volcanic group, and you can see where it spread from and to. Again, it went from the plate boundary, jumping up to the highest point in North America, Mount Denali, and then like a fracturing windshield spreading out across the whole mass. And we're reaching at least halfway across the mass right now. So up here in Alaska, we'll show you the volcanic group. The Selawik Hills, marked by the Smithsonian here, include 6 vents and other scattered lava fields to the south of the Selawik Hills. Well, there we go. There's the Selawik Hills. There's Selawik Lake. And we get back over here. There's the earthquake right next to it, and earthquake swarm. So, swarm, outbreak, ancient volcano from the Pleistocene Ice Age. It doesn't mean it's going to erupt. It's just a weak point already, pre-designated by Mother Nature, a previous fracture point that's vulnerable as energy inundates a whole mass. So, in other words, you go drill a point, or Mother Nature punches a point, up through a piece of stone, and then you start pressing on the side of it. Where do you think the energy is going to go? It's going to go to the drill point, or the break point. So that's what's happening, but it means the plate's charging with energy, and it's spreading up across the mass. Mount Denali, highest point, North America, going to the ancient volcanoes all across Alaska. Look at the Craton Edge up in the northwest. The green accretionary belt, the coastal plain, basically. Right? That gets charged with energy, which then goes down across the Craton, down into the United States. Now, we had a weird earthquake down here in Canada, but the USGS, hey, I gotta ask, we got a potash mine that's right there. And it was listed as a 10-kilometer deep quake. They don't have any 10 km, and it was reviewed by a seismologist too. So if they're going to, change it, they would have. 10 km deep. We don't have any mines there 10 km deep. Just so happened to be a couple miles away from a potash surface pit mine. Well, not even that. It was like a pond, one of those tail ponds. So I would think that that's not related. Well, anyway, it's a 4.2 quake that struck up here right just north of the North Dakota border, right in Canada. Do you see it? Now, the USGS reports other 4.2s around the world, like, for instance, this one down here in Ecuador. I'll click on it. You'll see USGS 4.2, Ecuador, at 10 km. So they report 4.2 quakes internationally. For them to omit a quake right here at the U.S. border is just troubling, because now, this morning, we got earthquake activity over here in New Hampshire and going up next to Maine. Southeast Quebec, get your Molsons, guys. A 2.7 striking on the edge of the Craton up there in Canada. But look, come on, we're in the northeast on the east edge of the Craton. We also swarmed on the New Madrid seismic zone. And this all happened after this incoming 4.2 came in from the northwest, and USGS totally ignored the quake. And I mean they ignored it. You have to go check the European feed to even get it. And I saw it on the feed. I said, well, hey, where is it? Hey, what's going on? I got on yesterday and talked about it. Now, it matters. So, looking at the United States, we have private stations that are owned by viewers at their houses and at rural locations. And they have now reported to me that 5.0 range quakes have been detected out here in the ocean. Now, again, these are viewer reports, and I don't have station access. And I'm not giving the info to anybody because I do not want to see them get shut off, IP bombed, or anything like that. However, no earthquakes for months out here, please. Of course, there are 4s and 5s that are striking out here. They're just not reporting them because they don't want you to see that a 4 will strike out there or a 5. And then a spread of quakes will go down across the North American plate. And they're really trying to hide that. Let me show it to you. Here's 2.8 and greater over the last 2 days. Just 2 days, but look at let's just look at the whole 6-day feed here. Almost 7 days. Hold on, I'll wait for it to populate. Look at that. And let's get the 2s out of there. Let's just look at the 3s and greater. There's 3 and greater. Do you see that U shape that goes down across California and goes back up into Kansas? Now, do you see the magnitudes? Again, I'm showing you 3.0 and greater. So they're all the same. Within a hair of a point, almost exactly the same. 3.3, 3.3, 3.4, 3.3, 3.5. Guess what? If you take the 3.4 plus the 3.1 plus the 3.3, guess what it equals? It equals 3.5. Anyway, energy going down across the U-shaped bend of the craton, going right back up into the oil pumping operations in North Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. Everybody talking about the next explosion over there in the Bermuda Triangle. Experimental blast, right? No, those are earthquakes. They're just covering for the USGS at the request of the Department of Interior, I think. But anyway, that's just my supposition. Anyway, earthquakes going across the plate all the way from the West Coast to the Midwest in the course of a couple days' time. And it all goes back to where they're not reporting quakes officially from the agencies to keep everybody calm. But so imagine in your mind's eye a 4.9, for instance, right here where the arrow is off the western coast of Vancouver. And that's likely what happened in the past couple days. Then a spread went across North America. But again, because they're hiding them, you're not going to see the quake out in the ocean unless somebody says something and you all go look it up yourself. Again, private stations show it, guys. All right, now, what do we look for? Since there was a 5 out there in the ocean and a spread of 3s going across the Midwest, we now have to look at our halfway points between our sets of quakes over the last 48 hours to determine the current areas that are under serious stress. So all I did now was turn it down to 48 hours worth of quakes, and we're looking at everything now 0.0 and greater. Let's turn off the numbers here so we can just see the actual quakes. So finding halfway points between this is finding halfway points between whole clusters of quakes. For instance, 48 hours shows us the entire coast of California from Eureka all the way down through the Bay Area, Hayward Fault, dead ending into Parkfield, the creeping section of the San Andreas, in other words. This diagonal line of quakes here has all happened in 48 hours. Sometimes we see the whole area go quiet for days on end with hardly any activity. So to see a big line of quakes there, that goes back up to the north, right? Goes back up to here at least. There's a volcano there, by the way. I'll show you in a second, called Clear Lake Volcano, where they all go to, where the big stack is. So a line of quakes coming in and going down, and then you see over along the California-Nevada border, do you see how it kind of makes a bend across the north part of the valley and connects in here? Let me turn the rings down a little bit more so you can see this. And then it goes down along the California-Nevada border, and they all kind of are going in the same direction, wouldn't you say? Diagonal line of quakes northwest to southeast here, north of Lake Tahoe. And you have to zoom in a little bit more to see it, but at least here, certainly a diagonal line of quakes going down across over to the Owens Valley, down here. And then, of course, Southern California. 3 different sets of diagonal lines of quakes. One going across the Mojave, down the San Andreas. Do you see this? And do you see the spacing on these? I want you to remember this. Please remember this, especially if you're a professional. Look at the spacing going from here to here, to here, to here, to here, to here, to here. And remember this. And the size of the quakes are all the same size. Exactly the same size, down to a hair of a point apart, 1.6 in most of them. So do you see 1.6, 1.6, 1.6, 1.7. And then we go down a little bit to a 1.2. And then back up here, the combined total of all of it at the end of the tank, 2. Take all those 1.2s, put them together, equals about a 2. And then there it is, reflecting off the back end down here at the end of the tank. So that's an equal spacing of quakes going across the area. So we look between our clusters. Where does that put us? There's 3 clusters, right? One along the coast, one over here along the border, and one down in Southern California, separated by a few smaller clusters of quakes that are numbering in maybe one or two different quakes, small. So that means the Mojave Desert, again. That means here in between Owens Valley and Long Valley. Here. That also means in between where the 2 come together across the North Valley. Let's show you. Up here. The quakes are coming down the San Andreas. I already showed that to you, a diagonal line this way. But I showed you 2 coming around the north side of the valley and then going down. This way, you see all the faults kind of go the same direction, right? Okay, so we watch between the 2 up here. That puts us to Shasta. It's where the 2 come together like a tuning fork. So we got this line coming in, coming off the Juan de Fuca. We got a line going up and around. a bent tuning fork. And we're going to watch right up here on the side of it, in between the two clusters, where they come together. So we watch where the clusters come together to the south. We watch where the clusters come together up to the north. I said there was 3 spots, right? Third spot is a cluster within a cluster. It's 3 clusters, one here south of Lake Tahoe, one here over at Monte Cristo Hills Volcanic Buttes, spread out across 100 square miles, or it's more, that's like 500 square miles. And then down here, going at the north tip of the Owens Valley, which is right next to a series of volcanoes called Crater Mountain. Let me show them all to you. Picture speaks 1,000 words. So 3 areas are going to get hit. What are the magnitudes to expect? I would expect 3 different mid-range to upper 4s, possibly going up into 5, but I'm going to put it in the 4 range. A spread of 4s. Coming off an 8, that's really low. But I want you to think about this. The energy is still trapped for the past week now up in Alaska still. Hence all the eruptions. So again, recapping, we're going to watch California for 3 sets of upper 4s. Now, I flopped last week. Just as a record, I make track of which ones hit and which ones don't, and something interfered again for like the 1,000th time. And what interfered? The slow slip. The slow slip up here in the northwest, happening on land, all the tremors. So the plate can start to shift, and we'll get hundreds, if not thousands, of small tremors that break out that kind of replace an earthquake. But that totally fudges up with my forecasting, which is finding halfway points between current sets of regular earthquakes. I need to come up with a slow slip forecasting methodology. I will, don't worry. I got priorities, though. All right, so looking at the rest of the quakes, we can expect small activity. Well, I shouldn't say small. Smaller than what we're expecting in California, but still bigger than what we're dealing with now. And so I have to warn Idaho going into Yellowstone for this week, for this swarm in Idaho to transfer slightly to the east on the edge of the craton, and where both come together, that's right in the middle of the park, for a new swarm to break out at Yellowstone. So that's pretty much a likelihood. Additionally, new 4.0 level activity should be coming into the panhandle of Oklahoma, right here at the Oklahoma-Kansas border region. Finally, East Coast, Virginia. Virginia, you guys gonna have to watch out for upper 3 to near 4. So in other words, we're gonna get 4s on the West Coast, 3s going into near 4-ish in the Midwest, and then 3s on the East Coast. That's following the Craton Edge again in the next several days. Virginia, Oklahoma, going back over to the west to California. And Yellowstone. Okay, now out in the ocean is a hit or miss. We have to wait for the goobers up in the northwest to actually do their job. Which, hey, I got a thing to propose to you. If there really are no earthquakes striking up there for years on end, why would we need so many seismic professionals up there? Right? Why would we need stations? Why, if there's no earthquakes, what's the point? There should be, and there are, but do you see them ever get reported? Over in the West Pacific we go, beyond Japan, over into Asia. And I've got a warning now going for 6.0 range activity at the Myanmar-China border region, which I issued earlier in my 7.0 earthquake update that I did in regards to the quake in Philippines. So not only is Japan going to get a 6.2, but most likely China going into Myanmar on the plate boundary right here. So like I told you, energy escapes out in all directions. It's going to go up to Japan. It's going to go down and around the S-shaped bend of the Indonesia plate boundary between Papua New Guinea and Indonesia, and go up and around the bend of Indonesia and dead end into Myanmar as the wave tank. So the break should go to Japan and go to Myanmar at least to 6.2. So magnitude less than the 7.2 in the middle of it all. 7.2 in the middle means 6.2 on one side and most likely 6.2 on the other. You see where the rings overlap too for the 2 previous quakes? It's pretty obvious, right? Right on the plate boundary that makes a bend through Myanmar, going over to Nepal. Over to the west, Nepal will get hit again. Now, it got hit last week, but the USGS did that weird not report thing again. So the Europeans reported an upper 4 to near 5. USGS ignored it. I wonder why. Well, I mean, now that you've had a second to think about it, the reason why they ignored the quake is because there's a guy they dissed online who said there was going to be a quake there in the 5-ish range, and it had been a few weeks since they had been hit. I think that's why, personally. But again, I mean, that's me, my supposition onto why. I'm not Sherlock Holmes. All I can tell you is that we all saw it, and then it didn't get reported by the USGS, and it was a legit quake. So it's going to happen again. The other side is going to get hit up here in China, which is the Taklamakan Desert, where the big red arrow is. Do you see where the rings overlap here? There's 3 sets of rings, actually. 1, 2, 3. They all overlap right here at the central Taklamakan Desert on the north side of the Himalayan range. So, we're going to be watching for the combined total of all 3 quakes. Let's add them together. 4.8 plus 4.7 equals 4.87. Pretty easy. So that we can really round that up to a 4.9. And then the earthquake in the middle of those was a 4.5. So we're at 4.945. We can round it up, guys. It's going to be a new 5 here on the north side. So north side 5, south side 5. As energy spreads across Asia and goes over towards Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran. You see where all 3 sets of rings overlap. Now, you see our arrows. Let's go back to the USGS plate boundary map. And you see the USGS has a red line in South Iran going through Pakistan this way. But we've got arrows on the north side going this way. The reason is because of the actual shape of the mountains that are flowing like molasses over a long period of time and bending around the Mideast to the north and to the south. And USGS has the plate boundary on the south side only. But seismic activity flows around the north side and the south side like it's breaking around a giant stone in a river. It flows, this energy that I'm talking about. But look where all 3 sets of rings overlap. They overlap on the thing that it's breaking around, isn't it? Again, if flow is going around this side and going around this side, then what's in the middle? The mass. The plate itself. So now in the middle of the plate, where all 3 sets of rings overlap, that's where the new hammering action is going to come in. And it's going to be the combined total of what's on all 3 sides. So 4.9 plus 4.3 equals 4.943. Adding in another 4 equals 4.944. Should we round it up? Yeah, 5. Just like what's coming out of China. So really, it's going to be 2 5s in China and a 5 where the rings overlap here in Iran. Then the cumulative total of all 3 sets of 5s is going to recombine, come out of Iran, go along the plate boundary, through the W-shaped bend of the plate, down here through the Mediterranean and Greece, between Cyprus and Crete. And you see right in the middle, well, let's go over and look at the quakes. Let's go look at our previous sets of quakes. Right in the middle of where the plate boundary comes up and around, we got 3s on one side go over into Turkey, which is small. We have 4s and mid-range 4s on the other side going up into Europe. Let's just take a look at the 4s. Take a look at this. Oh, by the way, Romania got it. You can check off Romania off the list if you're keeping track of areas that I named. Poland still is yet to go there. But so, a spread across all of Central and South Europe of 4s, and then basically nothing small going over to the east. Look at the middle of it, where all the rings overlap. Where do they overlap? South of Istanbul, southwest of Istanbul, here in the middle of the Aegean Sea. So I'm going to warn Turkey and eastern Greece for the combined total of 4 sets of 5s, plus what's currently on the way. These are the 5s that haven't struck yet. Okay, so I'm warning you for earthquakes that haven't struck yet. So first, there should be some 5s here, but we already have something coming in. This 5.1 here. Now, yesterday, when this 5.1 hit, I did an update, and if you caught it live, I talked about this spreading up to the north on the number 7-shaped Carlsberg Ridge here and going into Iran, and the other point breaking and going down towards Africa. Well, look what happened. A new earthquake struck today at the break point, exactly at the break point. And a new earthquake struck on the plate boundary on the north side, going up the number 7-shaped bend here on the Carlsberg Ridge. So it went around Saudi Arabia as expected this way, and so far it's reached over to the Red Sea this way. It's parting Part of it's going to go down into Africa, and the other part's going to be going up into South Europe. It's all going to recombine here, guys. So, in other words, we've got a bunch of energy that's getting ready to come into Europe. And there's going to be a new break in between the current sets of quakes here. Now, you might also look at this and say, well, Dutch, hold on. That's an open area across Turkey, too. But you got to remember there's a bunch of small little quakes that are going across there. You see that? So they kind of fill it in. So then we look between our current sets of big quakes to really find the area that's going to break, even though the small quakes are spreading across the interior portion of Turkey. I would say that fills it in, personally. Again, when I look, I'm looking between the bigger quakes mostly, and the smaller quakes I do take into account, for instance, in California when I'm trying to forecast threes. Threes and fours, we're trying to hit in California, so I got to look at twos and ones in order to figure out the areas that are getting hit. Anyway, so Central Europe's also going to get hit. After Greece, which, by the way, the magnitude on that should be 4 fives. 4 fives equals 5.4. Okay, it's pretty easy. Again, adding fives or fours or whatever together. When you add them together, it's 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 4, right? So in this case, we have 4 fives that are coming in. That's 5.0, 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4. It's taking them 4 fives and adding them together equals 5.4. 10 fives together equals a 6 and takes us the next step up. So if there were 10 fives over in China that were going to be coming in, I would say, guys, there's a 6 getting ready to hit over in Europe. The combined total of all those fives is going to repool back together on this plate boundary and come in right through that W-shaped bend in the plate and go hammering right in to South Europe right here. Then it'll spread 3 ways. You notice the USGS doesn't have anything on their map, but I've got 3 arrows like a trident pointing across all of Europe. Now, we already saw a spread go over to the east, following it perfectly, over to eastern Romania, 4.2 to 4.4. We saw 4s go right up the middle, strike right here in Croatia, going up to the Austria border. Let me get those on there. There they are. So the only thing left to go is Italy. And I'm going to watch Italy, where the current sets of rings overlap, which puts us down next to Campobasso. I'm probably butchering the way that's pronounced. Tanto amore to my Italian viewers. It's been a minute since I've had to issue a warning for Italy proper. Normally, we're talking on the north side up by Croatia now. The shift happened, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed, but in the past couple of years, that a shift has taken place where a lot of the energy is going right up the east side of the Adriatic and hitting our 2 arrows across Bosnia and Romania. Now, you're not out of the mix. I mean, it's just currently the energy in the past couple of years has preferred to go around the plate as opposed to try to bust up into Italy. I think that's because it broke previously. And it's more resistance there in Italy now, as opposed to a path of ease of resistance going around the east side. But when it gets locked and loaded, and you get jammed with a new bunch of energy, it means a break's going to happen. And so I'd watch right down here, in between the current sets of quakes, and I would put it into the upper 4-ish range. Let's put it at 4.5. When that happens, by the way, when I warn an area in Italy, it's kind of like the USGS. If a quake strikes, I'll give you an example. I warned right in here for a 6.3 earthquake to strike. Okay, big quake. Italy hardly ever gets 6s, right? Within a day or two, a big earthquake struck that knocked down buildings. And there was a fatality at least. But they reported the earthquake as 3.6. Now, did you hear me? I warned for 6.3. A big earthquake hits, knocks down buildings, causes fatality. They report the quake as a 3.6, the converse flip of what I forecast for. Now, you'd have to believe that 3.6s can knock down multiple story buildings for that to be true. What really hit? We'll never know. Something big enough to knock down at least one building and kill someone. I don't think 3.6 when I'm warning for a 6.3. But anyway, so that kind of funny business happens, and I think that's because of, I don't know. I went to a Jesuit high school. I kicked out of a Jesuit high school at the end of sophomore year and had to go to public school after that. I might not be on the best list with the people in Italy. You know what I mean? All right, let's carry on. So, finally, we're going to warn. Now, let's be serious. Brits, when energy is coming around the outside edge of Europe, which, again, outside edge, the eastern edge, the Craton edge of Europe, it tends to go to Poland, and then it tends to go up to Scotland. Strike up here in North Scotland, next to Aknaha Crater, or somewhere very close to it. Aknaha Crater is the remnant of an ancient volcano from God knows how long ago, but it's up there. So Aknaha Crater, we would watch on the north side of the UK, up in Scotland, and we would watch for a magnitude less than what's going to strike out at the end of the whole zone up here next to Jan Mayen and Svalbard. So I would look for it to be like in the four-ish range, actually, to be striking in the UK, up in Scotland, a 4, come on. And then up here, more like 5 to 5.5, striking at the tail end of the plate boundary where the arrow points. Let's get into Central America and South America. Mexico. We got to warn you now, and I hope you're listening. Terremoto warning. I don't know what the word warning is in Spanish. I should have looked it up. I should look it up. Let's look it up. Spanish word for warning. Advertencia. I don't know. I'm not hearing it. Hold on. Maybe I need to turn up my volume. It's not saying it. Okay. Anyway, Advertencia terremoto. It could go as high as upper 6.9 to 7.0. I'm going to look at South Mexico, where all the rings overlap, next to Guatemala, South Mexico, a very earthquake-prone location to begin with. But let's get back over and look on the plate boundary map from the USGS, down here. Do you see where the plate boundaries come together? Goes over to the east. Now we have Popocatépetl volcano that's erupting. We have Fuego volcano that's erupting right here where the plate boundaries come together. Down to the south, earthquake activity next to Nicaragua, but a few weeks ago we were erupting down here. Don't forget, Panama, 6.7 to 6.9 earthquake 2 weeks ago, right down here. So we've been moving along the coast with nothing over to the east of any significant size, not like we would expect. But today, imagine my surprise when a new deep earthquake pops off over east of Puerto Rico. Now, what does that mean? Well, look at the rest of this. This is actually, let me back it out, like an arrow. Do you see this? So you have to incorporate in the explosion, quote unquote, in the Bermuda Triangle, which wasn't an explosion. And then it really is. It's like a triangular arrow shape where this whole thing is lit up with activity. And they're equally spaced. Again, we have our standing wave that's spread out across how many tens of thousands of square miles? I mean, again, we're going from Mexico down to South America and back all the way over to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So this whole region shifted, and we can go back over and look at it this way. From here down to here and back up and out to here. Now, what's going on? A deep quake down below the East Caribbean? That is so rare. We'll get back over and take a look at it right there. Slightly raised high off the globe so you can see it easy east of Puerto Rico. I can tell you maybe a handful of times in the last 10 years have we had any deep activity over here on the east side of the Caribbean. It means there's something going on down below here, and we already know that. Because 6.7 to 6.9 earthquake right here 2 weeks ago, a bunch of volcanic activity, a bunch of 5s going from the Gulf of California down to Panama. That means the whole plate has become charged and it's trapped, the energy is trapped between here and over to the edge of the Caribbean. Hence the new deep quake. You got to remember there was a deep quake just a week and a half ago, right down here in Mexico that was rare. So something's building down below here. And then to top it all off, our back and forth effect that takes place from one side of the Pacific to the other. So it's a ping pong effect that can happen. Let me back it out and show you. Big quake over here, 7.2, results usually with compensation movement on the opposite side of the plate, latitude-wise, almost the exact same. And that puts us over into Central America. But I'm going to look on the north side of the plate where the earthquakes all overlap for our actual break point, which comes in on the plate boundary in South Mexico. Hence my warning. For an upper 6 to near 7 to be striking in Mexico, Terremoto advertencia. No bueno, guys. I can't do it. I can't speak anything other than broken English, man. Okay, American English too. It's just terrible. It's a horror, as they would say. It's foul over in the UK. Proper English. Now let's go down to the south. And we have 3 earthquake locations that are going to strike. You got to remember, right here, Nevados de Chilean was erupting over and over again for the past couple of weeks, where it travels underneath. Now look, travels underneath. Look what got hit. That already happened. Energy already transferred down there. That's the pinkish and red colored earthquakes. Let's get those out of there. Here's the current sets over the last 48 hours. So we have 3 areas: North Chile, Central Chile, and Central Chile. So 2 spots in Central Chile and 1 in North Chile. All 3 are going to get hit. Here, here, and here. And the size of the earthquake is going to be bigger than the combined total on both sides. So we're going up into the low 5 range, 5.1, 5.2, striking between our current sets. Now on the north side, again, we're looking for a big quake up here. When that happens, the wave will continue to spread until it reaches over to the East Caribbean. Now look at this. Do you see where both sets of rings overlap on Venezuela? Do you see my little red arrows right there? I think when energy starts to escape out, so first I think we're going to see a big quake here in Mexico, but eventually we're going to see this go over to Venezuela, and it's going to strike on the southeast side, here where the rings overlap. Again, do you see the small arrows there? So 2 things are going to happen. Again, Mexico is going to break, but the energy should try to go out over to the east. That's what we expect. And then, finally, Ascension Island, the mid-Atlantic ridge down here where our 2 X's are, should light up with new earthquake activity as energy finally escapes out and goes over to the east. Now, the size down to the south, again, we're talking about 5s down in Chile. It's not that big of a deal, right? But I have to add in, we have new deep quakes. New deep quakes are taking place right now, which will add more energy. It's pumping more energy into the wave tank here. So once the energy is pumped into the tank, if the deep earthquakes stop or cease for a little while, it's just like stopping pushing at each end of this tank here in the laboratory. That if you stop pushing down at this end, or you stop pushing down at the other end, or you stop pushing at both ends, like an accordion, it will eventually equalize, or try to. But each time you push something new in, it adds more energy into the already wavy system. So new deep quakes, we do not want to see them, and we've already got at least 1 here, all the way over the tip of the arrow in Afghanistan, deep 4.1, raised high off the globe, and we have a deep earthquake here next to our letter D at Fiji, Tonga. Are there any more? Oh, there is. There's a deep earthquake over here next to our letter D in South America, right at the Chile, Argentina, Bolivia border region. So that's pretty much, wouldn't you say, oh, and of course, Central Caribbean over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4 points, and the area is spanning, hold on, another one. Deep earthquake in North Japan, next to our letter D, the Sea of Okhotsk. So what's the area covered there? Afghanistan, Japan, Tonga, South America, Caribbean. Isn't that 3/4 of the planet? That there's just a sliver here where there's no deep earthquake activity right now. Well, hold on. There is a slightly deep earthquake in Eastern Europe. How deep is this? 134. That's iffy. That one's iffy. That's not exactly down below the plate. That would be at the bottom of the plate, but not below it. These would all be below the plate. Some spreading 3/4 of the planet down below the plates. Which means we're dealing with something big. And we already know that because 2 weeks ago, not even, 8.2 up in Alaska, all the volcanoes blowing across the Aleutians, going down into the Kuril Islands. We got a new 7.2 with tsunami. That's 2 tsunamis in the last 2 weeks. What more do you need? 2 tsunamis last 2 weeks. That's an increase. Now, aloha to my Hawaiian viewers. Guess who else went up, but only went up in the number of quakes? The frequency increased out here on the big island of Hawaii. But why? Why did you suddenly go up like just a small beat of a drum like this to a full snare drum roll that I couldn't even do on my desk if I tried? I mean, we're talking about a big increase in the number of earthquakes, but the power behind it, the amplitude, the magnitude, not that big yet. But it is going to go up. It's going to go up by twofold, or well, 100-fold of power. It's going to go up by 2 magnitudes. So we're at 2s. You're about to go back up to upper 4s. But why? Trace the Hawaiian island chain back, will ya? Hey, will you do me a favor? Will you trace the Hawaiian island chain back up here to the north? Because you can. You can see it right here. It goes back up to the north and goes and connects into Kamchatka, where all the eruptions are just happening. So we have Karimsky erupting here. We have Shiveluch erupting here. We have Shirinkotan erupting here. And we have Seismopochnoi erupting here. So, in other words, a bunch of eruptions right across. And again, this looks like an arrow, doesn't it? That comes down and goes over. Now notice, the Hawaiian island chain branches off of that, goes down and over, and dead ends into this fracture zone. Do you see which way the fracture zone goes? Goes slightly to the west, here, which goes and connects over to this, which is Tamu Massif, the biggest undersea mount on the planet. Now, on the other, you see this line of undersea mounts? It's like a line of small islands, but these are all under, of course, under the sea. They're volcanoes. And it carries on and goes down to the south. Carries on and makes a bend and makes a crescent shape and goes and connects right into, look, where our earthquakes are. That's no coincidence. We can trace that back now. So we go from where our earthquakes are in South Peru in a crescent shape that follows these undersea mounts back up along, and look what spans out to the east of most of this undersea mount chain. Every one of our equidistantly spaced fracture zones, why are they somewhat equally spaced? There's been a distribution of energy over a long period of time that Mother Nature has tried to disperse across this. I would think of this as the mid-Pacific fracture zone. You know, the mid-Atlantic ridge right here, everybody knows it cuts the entire Atlantic in half. Well, what about the mid-Pacific ridge that cuts the entire Pacific in half? But instead of a ridge, instead of a fracture, it's a bunch of volcanoes. It's actually rising points. Giant letter C shape. Now it matters because energy comes down out of here, combined total of volcanoes or earthquake, and it flows, that wave flows down, and it gets to Hawaii, where it has to go over to the east. Notice where it goes to, the Gulf of California, right? So, coming out of Hawaii, you go over to the Gulf of California. Who was moving this past week? The Gulf of California. Bunch of earthquake activity all the way across Mexico. You don't see it now because the Europeans are reporting it. The USGS is ignoring the activity in the Gulf of California too, because it proves everything I'm telling you. And they said it. They issued statements about me. Okay, guys. So, and they did. They went on Twitter and all kinds of stuff. And now, 4.0 range. Where on the Big Island we can go in between our current sets of quakes, and that will help us to determine the spot. Now, even the untrained eye should be able to see that there's somewhat of a ring of quakes going around this big brown splotch. But there's something actually in the middle here next to the big brown splotch that's the cause of all these quakes going around the big brown splotch. What's the big brown splotch? Big brown splotch is called Mauna Loa out here on the Big Island. I'm going to come out, guys. Coming to take over. Dutchlandia. We're going to rename it. You can still call it Hawaii. I'm going to call it Dutchlandia. I'm going to plant my flag. They'll run me out of there in about 2 seconds. But you know, before we do, let me just tell you. This thing here is the biggest shield volcano on the planet on the surface. Now, I just told you about Tamu Massif. That's on the other side of this undersea mount ridge. Tamu Massif is right here. So like a yin-yang, on one side, you've got Tamu Massif. On the other side, you got Hawaii, and in the middle, you got your dividing point, which is this under Seamount Ridge that goes all the way down and connects over to Peru, of all things. But now I'm going to zoom in. And the earthquakes are going around all of this. Let's go compare. Wait for it to refresh. 0.0 and greater, last 2 days. Here's the last week. Last 6 days. But, 2 days, 6 days, still showing it. I mean, again, if we take it all out, you can really see it. It goes all the way around here. Wouldn't this be the center of it? Again, if this is the perimeter on this side, and this is the perimeter on this side, what's the center point? It's on the southeast side of Mauna Loa, would be the target center point between all of these. If we can omit these two up here on the northeast, that's at the start of the week. So that's like almost 6 days ago. I'll get those out of there. There we go. So what's in the middle? The Middle East Rift Zone, or the Middle Rift Zone. But this is Hawaii Volcanoes National Park right here. And right here is Kilauea. The famous volcano. You can see the old pictures here from last year, I guess, with the lake inside of it that filled. It blew now. It filled with lava. I don't know where it's at now. I haven't looked at a webcam in a minute, but that's the middle of it, guys. The southeast side of Mauna Loa. Right here. So that's where we watch. Kilauea. We're going to watch in the middle of the whole ring of quakes. What could cause a big ring of quakes around the Middle East Rift Zone, or the Middle Rift Zone? How about charging magma? But why would magma charge? How about an incoming standing wave that inundates the magma chamber? Starts hammering into it. And how about that magma chamber being along something that the USGS doesn't even acknowledge exists, which is this that goes down and across. It flows down and over into Hawaii, while the predominance or bulk of the energy actually goes down and around all the way to here. Strikes right where it tail ends into South America. And going back to the USGS map, it's blank as a whatever. Blank as a baby's bottom. All the way down and across. They don't have anything. There's a connection point between up here and Peru. And it goes right across and up and dissects, whatever, cuts in half the Pacific. So that's going to happen too. Hawaii's going to get hit by 2 magnitudes greater in the middle, right next to Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. If anything else happens, I will get on it at a moment's notice. That's my forecast for now. Aziz! Azay! Hey, you don't have any earthquakes. I have to do this solely based upon what I think is going to happen. So we're going to be seeing a new earthquake strike up here in the northwest by the end of this week. This is getting out to the end of the week. But I'm already looking for energy to go and flow over to Myanmar, go up to Japan. That's where we're expecting. There may be new 4.8 to 4.9, upper 4, striking right in here, which then would result, after that hits, which it hasn't hit yet, would be another forecast for southwest Australia, down near Perth, southeast Australia, Kangaroo Island, going to Adelaide, and Tasmania down here, actually south of Tasmania, by my big underwater base. It's like a James Bond villain lair rises out of the ocean. I come up to do my broadcast. When that happens, it causes a 4.0 range quake. I'm kidding. Some conspiracy theorist on YouTube is going to seize on that. I can promise you. They'll target antenna arrays and say that I control them or something. But now, serious. Down to the south also should get it by the end of the week. Now, is it going to matter? It will only matter if it strikes in Adelaide itself. Because we're dealing with 4s coming in. I would think upper 3s going across. If a 4 comes in, 3 should go across. It's not that much loss of energy. Finally, and this might be shooting out too far here, but by the end of this coming week, so by the end of my forecast, maybe just a couple days beyond, we may see a new earthquake out here by the famous Ayers Rock. Well, Uluru. Ularu? Oh, don't even try. I know it starts with a U, and I can't say it proper. Don't try to tell me how to say it. You know where I'm talking about. It's the famous rock structure that they show in all the movies like Crocodile Dundee and anything with Australia in it. They show the rock. It's a jutting up rock feature that comes out of the middle of Australia. And the reason it's jutting up out of the middle of Australia is because energy flows to there and pushes up under the middle of Australia, causing not just that. Here's Uluru, Ayers Rock. Again, you've seen this before, right, in movies? But right next to it are a bunch of others. Look. They're just different shapes, but they're folded and bent. And wait, folded and bent, look at this. Interior craton edge of Australia. Where have I seen that before? How about the United States? Remember this shape here. Or how about the Middle East? Over in Iran. But I'll show you the United States. Remember that shape? We're going over to Arkansas. Central United States, just like central over in Central Australia. But we have the same shapes and bends. They're just covered in trees. Maybe I need to turn off the borders and labels. Same shapes and bends, they're just covered in trees. So we're at the center of the plate of the United States in Arkansas, and we get earthquakes there on the bend of the plate. And then we get back over here to Australia, and, well, lo and behold, there they are. It's the same thing, everything. The exact same shape, size, everything. Just not covered in trees because it's out in the outback. Not covered in green, lush trees. Now, the same could be said over here into Iran. Take a look. Now, this gets a little bit more mountainous, but nonetheless, they're the same. Slightly older, maybe. But they're all across here. And you see it. Okay, now this is the center of the plate boundary. In Iran, on both sides, it does it. And, well, actually, even on the back east by southeast side. But they're more mountainous. They're a little harder to see the ring-like shape to the folds and bends that get, I guess, pushed and turned up over time. Hence the circular shape or the oblong shape to that. So it's not just there. It's, I mean, we could just keep going. We can go across Africa. You find them in the middle of Africa, where the folds and bends in the plate take that structure shape. But that's the way the seismic flows. You find them in Europe, too, right? Around the outside edge. But again, they're a little bit more mountainous and covered in trees. Anyway, I digress. I just love showing people because what we found, including in Australia, that earthquakes come in from the northwest and spread down to Perth, down to Adelaide, down to Tasmania and beyond. That just is basically proof that the whole plate gets inundated with some kind of wave. We basically are finding the force that causes earthquakes. It's not that one earthquake causes the other. It's not that a 4 up here is going to cause 3s down here. It's that the 4 and the 3s are caused by an inundating force that saturates the whole plate and just drops off the earthquakes along the way. It's what precipitates the quakes. It's the force that causes the quakes. And it spreads out following the plate boundaries. The red lines comes up from down below, of course. And then it spreads out across the plate boundaries and across the craton edges. For instance, the United States. But all the plates do it. And that's why we have the arrows on them to let you know which way to expect the flow to break around it, because it breaks around a plate like a rock in a river. And that is my update for, one final, hold on, one more. Where the rings overlap down here on the South Sandwich Islands, out here in the middle of nowhere, east of the island chain. Let's go down to the east by southeast tip of it. We're down here on the southeast tip of it. I hate doing this, man. They did this on purpose. They say this is part of Antarctica. It's the appendage off the end of Antarctica. Yeah, okay, Illuminati, Naughty. I guess this is its foot. This is its tail. That's, you know what I'm saying? And it comes up and goes over and dong. But let's just say that really exists. And that they aren't goofing around by putting that on there. Regardless, there's going to be a quake out here in between the two quakes. And it's going to be the combined total of what comes in from South America and goes down and strikes at the dead end of whatever that is. So, middle point, we got 5s on both sides, but incoming energy from South America as well, including eruptions. Let's put it to 5.5 out here in the middle of nowhere. Now I can sign off, but before I do, let me tell you to have an earthquake plan. You need to know what to do. You seriously need to know what to do when a quake strikes. Take shelter. You can scream earthquake, but you could probably do that from underneath the desk or a table. You don't need to run around and tell everybody earthquake. They already know it's happening. But I've never been in a quake, so I don't know, not of any size. And I say this all the time now so that people understand. I'm just the guy who discovered the pattern. I've never been in a quake. I was never really into science much. Sci-fi all the time. Doctor Who? Oh man, yeah, I could name you every Dalek episode. I could tell you about the Time Lords. But I couldn't tell you very much about anything that I learned in anything because I only went to high school and graduated almost the skin of my teeth. So, now I'm in my mid-40s, and I just so happened about 10 years ago to start making a series of discoveries having to do with HAARP and weather modification, which then led into earthquakes and other things, which then led into the earthquakes going across the cratons, the earthquakes following the plate boundaries, the standing waves striking in between current sets of quakes as the next spots to watch, and the adding of magnitudes, the deep earthquakes causing shallower, larger earthquakes. It's been a process of discovery over the last 10 years. If you would like to know how to repeat the method fully, I've already published How to Forecast an Earthquake by Dutch Sense. It's no secret. Not trying to sit on top of it or anything. You can repeat the method. You can test it. There's whole classrooms of people that repeat it. Students do it. Teachers having their kids do it at private schools. It's being done. If you're behind the times and you want to learn how to do it, I've explained in depth, hour-long video, How to Forecast an Earthquake by Dutch Sense. I did it the day I got the biggest earthquake in California right in the last 20 years. I issued a warning for a 7.0 earthquake to strike in Central California, right between Bay Area and over here to Long Valley, and a 7, the biggest in 20 years, hit just south of there the next day, right here, at a place called Ridgecrest. So I warned here to here, and the earthquake hit here. It was within 200 miles of my warned area, and that's an earthquake forecast hit. And it's the largest quake in 20 years for the whole state of California, or for the whole United States, really. I mean, it was the biggest quake in a long time for anywhere, and for California, it was the largest in 20 years. That day, that evening, I then got on and remade my original How to Forecast an Earthquake video. Everybody was like, dude, you got to remake that. It's about time. Da-da-da-da. It's 2018. You just nailed the biggest quake in California in 20 years, and you warned them the day before. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and make it. So I redid it, and it's been up since 2018 if you want to watch it and learn the principles in depth. I will be back if anything else goes down. One more thing, don't be scared. There's no reason to be scared anymore. It's more like the weather. You would be prepared. You would be vigilant. Just like a weather event is intimidating when you go through it, but you don't have to live in perpetual fear of it randomly striking. You can see it coming on the radar. You can see it coming on weather satellite. The same could be said for seeing the earthquakes coming, that you can now watch them develop and spread over the course of a few days. And you know that when there's a lot of big earthquake activity, that there's the potential for big earthquake activity to come your way. You watch it like a flowing river. And if you live along the river, you watch for flooding, right? Well, you would watch for seismic flooding in this case. I live along the line, right here, on the New Madrid seismic zone, north side of it, right where the arrow goes, right over it. It goes right over it next to my house. I have to watch. But I know to watch over here first, and watch for a buildup to take place over to the New Madrid seismic zone. And I know to watch that for a flow to go up the East Coast. And if it doesn't go up the East Coast, then I really do start to worry about a locked amount of energy in the Midwest that could break on the New Madrid. But if I see a flow go up the East Coast, then I look between my sets of quakes on the East Coast for the next one to strike. I look for the flow to keep going across the plate. Energy tries to move around these things. It doesn't get stuck very much at all. And when it does, you'll know it. Like up in Alaska, for instance, with all those new eruptions taking place this week. So there's no reason to be scared anymore about quakes. Now you can be prepared, you can be vigilant. They'll still be intimidating, I suppose, when it strikes. But the fear aspect, bye-bye. Now it's time to be prepared. And that's the real pain in the, you guys can have an emergency kit. And that would probably take the edge off a lot. The emergency kit will get you through in the case of an emergency, not just earthquake, flood, evacuation, fire, that kind of thing. You would have your change of clothes, set of shoes, flashlight, batteries, first aid kit. Let me remind you to put something in your bag. Put in your emergency kit an antihistamine like Benadryl. an anti-allergen that prevents swelling. On Friday, I was out weed whacking the hill in my backyard down by the lake. Well, on the way down to the lake, we got a steep hill. Getting it ready for my wife's family to come over. We're celebrating her 40th birthday. And so it's Friday, and I'm out there in the afternoon, and I go to weed whack the hillside just around the stairs. Go up and down these stairs all the time. Shouldn't be a problem. And zoop, I hit a yellow jacket nest in the ground. And at first, I thought I was getting bit by a horsefly because we got a lot of deer around here. And I thought I was getting bit on the hand by a horsefly. I had my 80s shades on, those Terminator-looking ones, the girl watches, whatever you call them. And I couldn't really see it very well, and I whapped it. And that's when it really started. They started hitting my legs, my arms, my back. I started screaming the F word, running up the hill, and I've got the weed whacker in hand still. I throw it down on the ground to get better speed, and they're still on me as I get to the front door of the house. And I run inside, and I'm pulling and my wife's like, there's one on you. And I'm like, oh my God. I pull my shirt off, it's still stinging me. It flew away in the house. And I ran out to the garage thinking there was more on me. And taking my shirt, my pants, and everything, and I'm in my undies, and I run back in, and I'm like already getting swelling. It's starting to hurt. It hurt so bad. I took a quick hot shower, which kind of helped, and then we are on the way to the hospital. And so I was super pissed at myself for not having Benadryl in the bug out bag. The one damn thing. I got everything. No Benadryl, no antihistamine to stop, and you never know. An earthquake strikes. That could stir up bees and hornets and all that kind of crap. And you might be outside or have to be there, or might be even inside. You might have a broken window and it might come in. The point is, you would need to have some kind of antihistamine, anti-allergen that prevents you from having anaphylactic shock where your throat seizes up and you can't breathe. And the way you do that is you take a Benadryl or an EpiPen. But the EpiPen is more serious. That's going to be a big injection on you. But I'm talking about something you can take orally still before you start having an anaphylactic shock. Okay? Man, you want to talk about learning a lesson. I've got plenty now, and it's plenty enough to get me and the Duchess and anybody else if we have a problem through an allergic event. Just remember, those kind of things can come in. Yes, it'll save your life. Having an emergency kit. I live 30 minutes away from a hospital. We're in the middle of nowhere out here. Calling an ambulance, we would have been waiting longer. Duchess threw me in her little car, and we are flooring it. Man, what a weekend. Anyway, little lesson learned. Hey, you learn from me. Let me be the guinea pig on certain things. I'm not gonna be a guinea pig on all kinds of stuff. I'll save this now, and we're gonna go put this over on YouTube so everybody can watch back the forecast and see all the areas that are warned for this week. I didn't even really mention Africa, but I did yesterday. Africa, South Africa, or Southern Africa down at the X is also going to get hit by a 4.9. Adding that in here at the end of I don't think I had many viewers down there, probably none, but if you know anybody in Southern Africa down here by where the X is, let me show you where the X is. There we go. You know anybody down here, let them know. 4.9 incoming. Now, you remember there was the volcano that went, but come on. It's incoming now. It's starting to split at the Y intersection up here, coming out of the Gulf of Aden. It's already going up. 4s are already going up into Iran. So, come on. It's going to split and go down your way as well. Get ready for that. Word up. Much love. Peace out. Enjoy the view.